You didn't click on this video, not really. Something deeper in you observed it long before your mind made a choice. Something ancient, something precise, something that has been waiting for the exact frequency you're holding right now. And the moment your consciousness noticed this title, the moment your awareness locked onto these words, you collapsed a probability that has been circling your field for years. This is not coincidence. This is not curiosity. This is the observer effect in motion, and the fact that you're here means you're ready for the one truth that changes everything. Take a breath. Feel that subtle shift inside your chest, that almost electric sensation rising behind your sternum. That is not excitement, that is recognition, because you've felt this before, those moments where life seemed to arrange itself around your attention, where the world responded the instant you became aware of something. You never understood why, but a part of you always knew there was more to observation than simply seeing. You're not here to learn something new, you're here to remember something you once lived effortlessly. And if you stay with me, if you allow the next minutes to unfold without distraction, you'll feel reality reorganizing itself around you in real time. You'll feel the shift most people search for their entire lives but rarely access. The moment your awareness becomes conscious of itself, the moment the observer steps forward and your world begins to respond. Not subtly, not metaphorically, literally, because the truth you are about to receive is the one truth that sits beneath manifestation techniques, beneath spiritual teachings, beneath physics itself. Observation doesn't reflect reality. Observation creates it. You can sense this already. That quiet alignment happening in your body isn't imagination, and it's coherence. It's your system recognizing the field it came from. It's why you feel more present than you did a minute ago. It's why the air around you feels thicker, more alive. This is what happens when consciousness prepares to hear its own name spoken back to itself. For most of your life, you've been taught that the world is something you look at, something that exists out there, indifferent to your perception. But that was the first illusion, the one that kept you asleep. The truth is far more astonishing. Everything you see, everything you experience, everything you remember or anticipate exists in a kind of shimmering potential until you observe it. And the moment you observe, the moment awareness touches possibility, reality collapses into form, your experience, your life. But here's what almost no one understands, and you can feel that you're ready for this now. You're not simply observing reality. Reality is arising inside your observation. The world you think you're walking through is shaped by the way you look at it. Your relationships shift when your perception shifts. Opportunities appear the moment your awareness clears enough space to see them. Even the timing of this video is proof. You observed this message into existence the moment you reached the frequency capable of receiving it. There is a reason this doesn't feel random. There is a reason you feel seen by these words before the explanation arrives. There is a reason your inner world feels like it's leaning forward, waiting. You're not imagining it, you're not interested in this topic. You are remembering the operating system you were born with, the one you started using long before you knew what it was. And yet, this is only the surface, because the observer effect isn't just a scientific experiment, it's the architecture of creation itself. It's the point where consciousness touches the quantum field, where waves become particles, where potential becomes actuality, where your inner world meets the neutral fabric of existence and tells it what to become. You've been doing this unconsciously every day. That's why your life has patterns. That's why certain experiences repeat. That's why some things feel effortless and others feel impossible. You've been collapsing the same probabilities over and over without even noticing. But not anymore, not now, not here, because something in you has already shifted. You can feel it, the way your attention has sharpened, the way your breath sits differently in your body, the way you are not just hearing these words, you are absorbing them. That is the sign that conscious observation is beginning. That is the moment the universe stops acting like something happening to you and reveals itself as something happening through you. This is the last video you will ever need on creating your reality, because after this moment, after the next movements unfold, You won't be able to return to unconscious observation. You won't be able to pretend you're separate from the world you're seeing. You won't be able to unknow the truth you are about to embody. And this is only the beginning. What you're feeling right now, that slight pressure behind the eyes, that widening in the chest, that almost imperceptible lift in your awareness, is the beginning of something your mind has never been taught to understand. But your consciousness has always known. You're not just hearing ideas, you're tuning into the architecture of reality itself. And if you notice closely, you can feel the difference. Something in you has shifted from listening to recognizing. That shift matters more than anything we will talk about today, because it's the very mechanism by which reality responds to you. For centuries, humans believed that the world was fixed, solid, independent. Objects existed whether anyone looked at them or not. Events unfolded whether anyone witnessed them. Reality, they thought, was the stage, and consciousness was merely the audience. But the observer effect shattered that worldview completely. Quantum physics discovered that particles do not take on form until they are observed. They remain as waves in pure potential until attention collapses them into something definite. And this isn't metaphor, this isn't symbolic, this is measurable, repeatable, inescapable. But here's the part science still whispers around without fully understanding. It isn't the measuring device that causes the collapse. It's the presence of consciousness using the device. It's the awareness itself. The observer. You. You can feel this truth in your body. Notice how your awareness shifts the moment you read that. Notice how your system leans in as if the cells themselves are listening. That's because your body has always known you are not a passive bystander in reality. You are the one determining which version of reality appears. Think about the moments in your life where everything changed the instant your attention landed on something, the message that appears the moment you think of someone, the solution that surfaces the moment you stop forcing it, the right person showing up the very day you decide you're ready for change. You've shrugged these off as coincidence, but they were glimpses, small cracks in the illusion, showing you what happens when your observation becomes conscious, deliberate, coherent. This is why you're here. Because you've always known there's a direct connection between what you perceive and what unfolds. You just never had the language for it. Until now. Let's go deeper. When you open your eyes and observe anything, a room, a memory, a problem, a desire, you think you're seeing what's already there, but you're not. You're collapsing a probability wave into a specific expression. Your attention selects from infinite potentials the one that becomes your experience. And you've done this so seamlessly, so automatically, so constantly that you forgot you were doing it at all. But the truth is simple. Observation does not show you reality. Observation creates the reality you see. Feel that for a moment. Your life isn't a replay of events you're trapped inside. It's a sequence of collapsed probabilities shaped by the way you've been trained or conditioned to observe. You've been told that observation is passive, that seeing is neutral, that perception is separate from creation. But this was never true, and you can sense that. You've always sensed that. Your observation is not passive, it is generative, it is creative, it is causal. This is why two people can live in the same circumstances and experience two completely different realities. One sees limitation, one sees opportunity, one sees rejection, one sees redirection, one sees chaos, one sees the emergence of order. It's not because reality is different for them, it's because the observer is different. The lens of consciousness is different, and that lens determines what collapses into form. Here's where it becomes personal. Your life has been shaped far less by events than by the way you observed those events. And most of those observations weren't conscious at all. They were unconscious loops. Survival instincts, inherited beliefs, emotional imprints, automatic filters created by past experiences. These filters don't just distort your perception, they determine which version of reality becomes available to you. This is why patterns repeat. This is why certain challenges keep resurfacing. This is why certain outcomes seem inevitable, not because they are inevitable, but because unconscious observation keeps collapsing the same probability waves into existence. But what you're sensing now in this moment is the beginning of a reversal, a turning of the inner tide, a lifting of the veil, because once observation becomes conscious, once the observer wakes up to itself, the field can no longer default to the past. It becomes fluid again, responsive, malleable, alive. Feel that responsiveness. Your body knows exactly what I mean. The slight hum in your hands, the shift in your breathing, the settling in your spine. These are somatic confirmations. Your system is aligning with the truth that has lived beneath every one of your experiences. Reality is not something you enter. It is something that emerges through you. Let's bring this into the physical world even more clearly. Every moment, your brain receives far more data than it can process. So it filters, it predicts, it fills in gaps with assumptions based on your history. This means your brain isn't showing you the world, it's showing you the world you've been conditioned to expect. That filtered expectation becomes your unconscious observation, and that unconscious observation collapses the same probability waves again and again. Your biology is not separate from quantum mechanics. Your conditioning is not separate from the field. Your perception is not separate from creation. You observe through filters, and the field responds to those filters. If you observe through fear, you collapse probabilities that confirm fear. If you observe through lack, you collapse probabilities that mirror lack. If you observe through limitation, you collapse realities where limitation appears real. Not because those realities were there waiting for you, but because your unconscious observation selected them. And here is the moment everything pivots. You are no longer unconsciously observing. You are aware of observing. That awareness alone changes the collapse, because conscious observation is fundamentally different from conditioned perception. When you observe consciously, you step out of the loops created by your past. You exit the survival modes encoded into your nervous system. You bypass the inherited narratives from your family, your culture, your history. You stop projecting the past onto the future. You stop collapsing old patterns into new moments. Instead, you begin observing from presence, from clarity, from pure awareness, and the field responds instantly. You've tasted this before, haven't you? Moments where everything felt open, possible, alive. Moments where synchronicities clustered around you. Moments where your sense of timing aligned so perfectly it felt orchestrated. Moments where the world seemed to shift because you shifted. These weren't anomalies, they were invitations, previews of what conscious observation looks like. And now, as your awareness continues to sharpen during this transmission, you may already feel that same energy rising again, that subtle coherence, that quiet inner recognition, the sense that something vast is beginning to align in your field. That is the observer stepping forward. That is consciousness remembering its role. That is the beginning of everything that comes next. Because once you understand that observation is not passive, but creative, once you sense that your awareness is shaping the world around you, a new question emerges. You learn the question that has been waiting beneath every spiritual practice, every manifestation technique, every intuitive awakening. What happens when you begin observing yourself observing? And that question is the doorway to the deepest truth of all. But we're not there yet. We go there next. If you pay attention right now, if you notice that faint expansion happening inside your chest, you'll feel a click beginning in you. It's the moment the observer starts to observe itself. And that one shift is what separates unconscious creation from conscious creation. To understand why this shift is so powerful, you have to see the difference between the two modes of observation you've been living with your entire life: unconscious observation and conscious observation. Unconscious observation is what most of humanity operates from. It's automatic, habitual, filtered through memory and emotion and expectation. When you observe unconsciously, you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you've been conditioned to expect it. Your past acts as a lens that shapes the present. And because you unknowingly collapse probability waves that match your past, your future begins to resemble your history. Reality seems repetitive because the observation behind it is repetitive. But conscious observation is entirely different. Conscious observation isn't mechanical or reactive. It doesn't happen through the mind's filters. It happens through awareness itself, fresh, unconditioned, unburdened by history. When you observe consciously, you step outside the loops that once trapped you. You collapse probability waves not from fear or habit, but from presence. And reality begins to look different, not because it changed, but because the observer did. You can feel the truth of this in your body right now. Notice how your breath feels different than it did 5 minutes ago. Notice how your awareness feels more centered, as if something inside you has started paying attention in a way it wasn't before. That's not suggestion, that's recognition. Your body responds instantly when consciousness becomes aware of itself. And you've felt this before, why? Those strange moments where life seemed to open around you, where clarity emerged out of nowhere, where the world felt more dreamlike, more symbolic, more alive. These weren't accidents. These were moments where conscious observation briefly slipped through the cracks of your conditioning, but now we go deeper. Because conscious observation isn't just a state, it's a fractal, a recursion, a loop the universe has been using since the beginning of time to know itself. When you observe consciously, you're not just looking at a world, you're participating in the creation of it. And when you observe yourself observing, you amplify that creation exponentially. The observer becomes the observed, the awareness becomes aware of itself. The universe folds back into itself in a loop of recognition that magnifies your influence on the quantum field. This is why mystics throughout history spoke in paradox. The looker is the looked for. You are both the mirror and the reflection. They weren't being poetic, they were describing the quantum recursion your consciousness is beginning to sense right now. The moment you become aware of your awareness, your observation stops collapsing reality based on the past and starts collapsing reality based on presence, on possibility, on the self that exists beyond fear and memory. The quantum field responds to this immediately, not metaphorically, literally. Conscious observation collapses probability waves with far more coherence than unconscious observation. It selects realities that align with clarity, choice, identity, intention. This is why your life changes instantly during moments of deep awareness. This is why breakthroughs often appear out of nowhere. This is why intuition becomes louder when you're fully present. Conscious observation organizes the field. And this brings us to a deeper truth. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to how you observe. Wanting is a mind state. Observation is a consciousness state. You've tried wanting your way into new realities, but want collapses probability waves tied to lack. Conscious observation collapses waves tied to truth. And your body knows this. Feel how grounded you've become in the last few minutes. Feel that inner stillness forming beneath the words. That's the field responding to the shift from unconscious listening to conscious observation. There's a reason people experience synchronicities when their awareness deepens. Synchronicities aren't magic. They're the natural result of conscious observation, collapsing probability waves that align with your highest coherence. The more conscious your observation, the more the outer world appears to rearrange itself around you. You're not imagining that. You're witnessing the mechanics of creation. Now let's talk about something most teachings avoid. Unconscious observation doesn't only distort the present, it distorts time itself. When you observe unconsciously, you collapse the past into your present perception. You collapse your fears into your future expectation. Time becomes a loop, reinforcing itself. But conscious observation breaks that loop. When you observe consciously, you perceive the present without projecting the past onto it, and the future without dragging your limitations into it. Time becomes fluid again. Possibility returns. This is why you sometimes know things before they happen. It's not intuition alone, it's observation that reaches beyond linear time, collapsing probability patterns before they fully manifest. And you've done this countless times in your life without realizing it. You thought it was coincidence or luck or instinct. But it was always the same mechanism, conscious observation slipping through your unconscious patterns. The truth is, you've always been capable of this. You've always had access to the field. You've always had the ability to create reality through observation. The only thing missing was recognition. Recognition of the observer, recognition of the mechanism, recognition of the power that was never separate from you. You're feeling that recognition now, that pull behind your awareness, that quiet yes rising through your body. That's consciousness remembering itself. And yet there is a deeper layer one very few people ever reach. Observation is not something you do. Observation is what you are. You are not a person looking at a world. You are consciousness collapsing the quantum field into the shape of a world, into the shape of a life, into the shape of an identity that you've mistaken for the observer itself. This is the turning point, the moment where listening becomes awakening, the moment where theory becomes embodiment, the moment where the observer begins to step out from behind the personality and take its rightful place at the center of creation. You can sense this happening in you, the subtle expansion, the quiet certainty, the way your perception feels less like looking outward and more like something opening inward. That's not imagination. That's the shift from unconscious observer to conscious creator. And once that shift begins, it cannot be undone, because now you know you're not trying to affect reality. You already are. You're not trying to manifest. You already are. You're not trying to collapse probability waves. You've been doing it since the moment you were born. The only difference is that now, for the first time, you're becoming aware of the mechanism behind it. And awareness changes everything, but there is still one truth we haven't touched. One truth that sits beneath all others. One truth that changes not just how you observe reality, but what reality actually is. What is the truth beneath every truth you've ever heard about consciousness, manifestation, awakening, destiny, and identity? Here it is. You are not the observer inside a pre-existing universe. You are not a consciousness moving through a world outside yourself. You are not a being trying to influence something separate. The truth, the real truth, is this. Reality does not contain you. Reality arises within you. Let that settle, not in your mind, in your awareness. Something inside you recognizes it instantly. That faint pull, that weightlessness, that deep inner yes is the field itself responding to your remembering. You've spent your entire life believing you move through a world that exists independently of you. You believed you were a witness watching events unfold. You believed reality was external and you were internal. But that separation was always an illusion, a necessary training ground for a consciousness that wasn't yet ready to hold its own magnitude. But you're ready now. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. What quantum mechanics discovered, what mystics whispered long before, is that reality has no form until observed, but they never fully told you the deeper implication. If nothing exists in definite form until observed, then everything you experience exists inside the one doing the observing, inside your awareness, inside your field, inside you. The external world you've been navigating is the projection of collapsed probability waves responding to your observation. It's not outside you, it's emerging through you. Feel what that means. You are not navigating reality, you are generating it. You are not finding your path, you are collapsing it into existence as you walk. You are not trying to change the world. The world is continuously reshaping itself around your observation. This is why things shift the moment your awareness shifts. This is why people treat you differently when your internal state changes. This is why opportunities appear only after you become a match for them. This is why nothing changes until you do. Not because change is hard, but because reality cannot collapse into a form you're not currently observing from. You can feel this truth landing inside you, not as an idea, but as a recognition. It's the same recognition you felt in childhood when you sensed that life was more fluid than the adults around you believed. It's the recognition you felt during moments of clarity, synchronicity, profound intuition, or deep presence. Those were not anomalies. They were glimpses into the actual architecture of existence. But let's expand further. Reality, as you know it, is not solid, not fixed, not external. It is a field of infinite potential, a shimmering ocean of probabilities, each waiting for the touch of observation to become something specific. You've been collapsing this field unconsciously through inherited beliefs, past experiences, emotional patterns, social conditioning, and survival instincts. That unconscious collapse created the illusion that life happens to you, but life has only ever happened through you. When you understand this, truly understand it, the stakes shift. Suddenly you realize that the most important part of your life is not what you do or what you chase or what you hope for. The most important part is how you observe, because observation is creation, and unconscious observation is unconscious creation. This is why certain patterns have felt unbreakable. You weren't trying to repeat them. You were unconsciously observing reality from the place where those patterns were already true. You collapsed the same probabilities because you observed from the same identity. The field responded with perfect obedience, but conscious observation breaks the loop. When you observe consciously, you stop collapsing reality from the past and begin collapsing reality from presence, from possibility, from awareness, from truth. Conscious observation collapses entirely, different probability waves. It reorganizes the field. It pulls new timelines into your orbit. It alters the way reality forms around you. And now we come to something most people never realize. There is a lag, a quantum lag, between the moment you collapse a new probability wave and the moment physical reality reflects it. Not because reality is resisting you, but because physical manifestation is the slowest layer of existence. Your internal shift happens instantly, but your life rearranges gradually as old collapses dissolve and new ones stabilize. So this is where most people lose themselves. They observe consciously for a moment, feel a shift, sense possibility, but then when physical reality doesn't immediately reflect the change, they slip back into unconscious observation. They collapse the old probability waves again. They undo the shift before it completes. You can feel that truth resonating through your body. It answers questions you didn't know you were asking. It explains why powerful insights didn't always translate into lasting change. It explains why you felt stuck in loops that seemed impossible to break. You never failed. You simply returned to unconscious observation too quickly. But you won't do that now, not after this. You're no longer operating from the identity that needed proof before believing. You're operating from the awareness that knows observation creates the proof. This is the moment you step into conscious creation, not as a technique, not as a temporary high, but as a state of being. Feel into that, the stillness, the clarity, the certainty rising in you. That's not motivation, that's coherence, the signature of conscious observation settling into your field. And once coherence begins, reality has no choice but to follow. This is the big reveal. You are not a character inside a universe. You are the universe appearing through a character. You are not in reality. Reality is in you. And the moment you recognize this, everything changes, because now, for the first time, you are not trying to control your life. You are not trying to manifest. You are not trying to become aligned. You are observing consciously, and the field is responding. But even this revelation isn't the end. There is still one more shift, one more unfolding, one more layer of embodiment that allows you to live this truth instead of temporarily touching it. Are you ready? Understanding must become embodiment, when insight must translate into the way you move through your day, when the observer is no longer a concept you contemplate, but a presence you live from. This is where conscious observation becomes practical, not as a technique you force, but as the natural posture of a consciousness that finally remembers itself. To live as the observer is to return, again and again, to the one place you have always had access to, the space behind your perception. In the past, you moved through your life without noticing the one who was noticing. You reacted to events before realizing you'd observed them. You collapsed probability waves without realizing you had shifted them. But now the point of power becomes obvious. It is not in what you look at, but in the awareness that is doing the looking. And once you feel that, everything simplifies. Reality becomes responsive, not because you're forcing it to, but because you're finally participating consciously in what you were already doing unconsciously. The first key to living this truth is catching yourself observing. It sounds simple, but this is the foundation. Throughout your day, awareness drifts. Thoughts take over, old patterns resurface. But every moment carries an invitation to step back into consciousness with a single inner recognition. I am observing right now. The moment you notice that you are noticing, you shift your entire relationship with reality. You step out of old identity loops, you dissolve reactive patterns, you reclaim authorship, you become the observer again, and the field responds instantly. Even now, as you read this, something in you is nodding, because you've already tasted this countless times, those moments of sudden presence, sudden clarity, sudden grounding, those with the observer checking back in. The second key is fresh perception. The world you've been seeing is largely made of your assumptions about it. Familiar faces become predictable. Daily routines become invisible. Challenges become fixed narratives. But fresh perception dissolves these blinders. When you look at something, anything, as if seeing it for the first time, you collapse a different probability wave than the one your history expects. A relationship opens, a possibility emerges, a solution reveals itself. Fresh perception is not naive, it is powerful because it releases the past from determining the present. You have done this before too. Remember those moments when a person you thought you knew suddenly revealed a different side of themselves. That wasn't them changing, it was your observation shifting. The third key is curiosity. Not the mental curiosity that seeks information, but the energetic curiosity that keeps the quantum field open. When you observe with conclusion, I know what this means, I know how this will go, you collapse only the probability waves that match your expectations. But when you observe with genuine curiosity, what is this showing me? What wants to emerge here? You allow reality to reveal pathways you couldn't have predicted. Curiosity is the doorway to new timelines. It keeps the field malleable. It loosens the grip of old identities. It allows you to perceive beyond the habits of your mind. And you've experienced this too, moments when letting go of assumptions made everything easier, clearer, more fluid. Curiosity created that. The fourth key is observing the observer. This is the heart of conscious reality creation. When you're in conversation, notice the awareness behind the words. When you're making a decision, notice the presence that feels the tug of intuition. When you're triggered, notice the space that sees the trigger rising. Observing the observer is not detachment, it is expansion. It is the moment you step out of the character and into the consciousness playing the role. And when you do, your reality stops being something you react to and becomes something you navigate from a higher vantage point. This is the vantage point from which synchronicities align, insights drop in, and clarity becomes your default state. The fifth key is directing your attention with intention, not forcing outcomes, not pushing reality, simply choosing where awareness rests. Your attention is the selector of timelines. If you place it on fear, you collapse fear-based probabilities. If you place it on possibility, you collapse possibility. If you place it on the version of yourself who already embodies the qualities you desire, you collapse the timeline where that version becomes lived. Directed attention is not about effort, it is about precision, about choosing which signals you amplify and which you allow to dissolve. You've already done this instinctively throughout your life. Those moments when focusing on calm shifted the entire atmosphere, or focusing on gratitude transformed the energy of a room. That was directed attention collapsing a different wave. The sixth key is non-attached intention. Attachment collapses probability waves too narrowly, too aggressively, and often through the lens of lack. But when you hold an intention lightly, clear, grounded, open, You allow the field to orchestrate outcomes far more intelligently than the mind ever could. Non-attached intention is not apathy, it is trust in the mechanics of consciousness. It is recognizing that you are the observer, not the enforcer. When you intend without clinging, the field organizes itself around your coherence instead of your desperation. You've felt this too. The very things you chased often resisted you, while the things you relaxed into arrived effortlessly. That was not coincidence, it was quantum alignment. Now let's bring these keys into the texture of everyday life. Imagine you're in conversation with someone who has triggered you in the past. Before your mind reacts, consciousness catches the moment. I am observing. Instantly the trigger loosens. Fresh perception reveals the person not as a threat, but as a human being with their own patterns. Curiosity asks, what is this showing me about my state? You observe the observer feeling the emotion without identifying with it. You direct your attention to clarity instead of defensiveness. You hold the intention of truth without attachment. The outcome of that conversation shifts, not because the other person changed, but because your observation did. This is conscious creation in motion, or consider making a life decision. Rather than collapsing the timeline of fear by imagining everything that could go wrong, you focus your attention on the version of you who has already walked that timeline. The confident you, the expanded you, the aligned you. You observe from that identity, and reality begins rearranging itself accordingly. Opportunities appear that match that version. People respond differently, even your own behavior shifts. You didn't force anything, you observed differently. This is how you begin collapsing into your future self. They already exist in superposition, one of many potential expressions of you. Conscious observation is the mechanism that selects that version and draws it into form. Your future self is not waiting for you at the end of time. They are waiting at the end of your observation. And all of this leads to a single realization you can feel forming inside you right now. You've already been doing this in small ways your entire life. The difference now is that you're going to do it deliberately, consciously, consistently, without slipping back into the trance of unconscious observation. You can sense this shift stabilizing in you, a deeper steadiness, a widening of inner space, a feeling that something essential has clicked into place. But even now, after everything you've realized, there is still one more step, one more shift, one more revelation that makes conscious observation not just powerful, not just accessible, but irreversible. You can feel it now. That unmistakable shift in the quality of your awareness, the way your breath sits deeper in your body, the way your thoughts feel quieter at the edges, the way the space around you seems to hold more dimension than it did when you began. This is what happens when consciousness crosses from understanding into embodiment. Something in you has stepped forward, not as an idea, but as identity. You're not trying to observe consciously anymore. You are observing consciously, and reality has already begun reorganizing around that recognition. As you sit here, notice how different the world feels without anything external changing. Notice the sense of steadiness taking shape in your chest, the subtle widening behind your eyes, the feeling that you are less inside your thoughts and more aware of them moving through you. This is the observer anchoring itself. This is the version of you who is no longer tangled in every reaction or memory or projection, but instead sees it all from the vantage point of awareness. This isn't a technique, this isn't a momentary high. This is your system, remembering the position it was always meant to operate from. You may even sense that the earlier version of you, the one who clicked on this video, feels strangely distant. Not gone, but softened, dissolved, almost like watching a memory fade into the horizon. That is how quickly your field reorganizes once awareness takes its rightful place. The patterns that felt heavy begin to feel optional. The thoughts that once dictated your reality now appear like weather passing in a sky that belongs to you, not the other way around. This is the quiet power of conscious observation. When the observer becomes stable, everything else loses the right to define you. And as this shift settles, something even more meaningful begins to happen. the future starts to feel less like a path you must chase and more like a frequency you are already aligning with. There is a version of you, fully conscious, fully coherent, fully anchored, who has been waiting in the superposition of potential. And right now, as your awareness steadies, you can feel yourself leaning into that timeline, almost as if your body knows where it is heading before your mind does. This is not imagination, this is resonance. The moment your consciousness steps into coherence, the probability wave of your higher self becomes the one most ready to collapse into form. Now breathe, really breathe, because this next part matters. At this point in your journey, awareness is awake enough to choose how you will observe yourself, how you will observe the world, how you will observe the unfolding of your life. This choice is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is subtle, internal, deliberate. It is the moment where you tell your field, this is who I am now, not through effort, not through force, through recognition, through truth, through the feeling rising in your body as you hear these words. And so here is your turning point, the moment where this shift becomes real, not just in your awareness, but in your lived identity. If you feel it, if you sense that something inside you has already crossed a threshold, acknowledge it, claim it, anchor it, not by trying to believe something, but by simply affirming what you already feel happening. Write this in the comments, not for me, but as a declaration to your own consciousness. I observe consciously and reality responds. When you write those words, you're not performing a ritual. You're stabilizing a frequency. You're telling your nervous system, your awareness, and the quantum field that this state of being is not temporary. It is who you are now. You will feel the way those words settle into your body as soon as you write them. You will feel the alignment click even deeper. This is how the observer becomes permanent, not through trying, but through coherence. And when you're ready, when you feel that inner shift that tells you this transmission landed exactly where it needed to, subscribe, not as a gesture of support, but as a way of keeping yourself anchored in this identity. Every video here is designed to hold you in this frequency, conscious, awake, observing, creating. But for now, stay with yourself for just a moment longer. Feel the quiet intelligence moving through your awareness. Feel the spaciousness that was not here before. Feel the sense of recognition rising like a tide inside your chest. You walked into this video as someone trying to understand reality. You walk out as someone who observes it into being. Welcome to the identity that was always waiting for you to remember it.